We're on section 123, Laborers for the Vineyard. Laborers for the Vineyard. Okay, so the first question is going to be based on Matthew 20, verses 13 to 15. But he answered one of them and said, "Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst not thou agree with me for a penny? Take that thine is, and go thy way. I will give unto this last, even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good?" Okay, so the setting here is, Christ talking about the second coming, especially, and each one of these laborers that were hired is a parable about these laborers that were hired, one in the middle of the day, one at the end of the day, one in the morning, and the householder, he determines to give each one the same wage, and then there's some complaints that ensue, and then they end up, he ends up explaining to them, hey, it is his business what he's going to do that way. So I'll say right away that there are those maybe who are far along in their Christian walk, and some who are not so far along, but praise God, when Christ returns, we're all going to get to be in heaven. That is, all of us who are on the Christian walk at all, those who are saved, of course. Okay, so the question is, why was the householder at fault for how he paid his workers? And the answer that you got was C, he was not at fault. Okay, he was not at fault. He paid each worker what each one had agreed to work for. So the householder, of course, represents God, who has the sovereign right to make arrangements to deal with his people. And this is the proper use of the aspect of God's sovereignty, that God has a right to determine what is just. The householder is consistent with the rule that he established. He is not merely being arbitrary. The rule is this: I contracted with each of you, and so I am honoring my individual contracts. There's no inherent principle of payment at work here. He contracted with each individual according to what he's willing to pay at any time, and he honored his contract with each one. So when you look at B, he was not at fault. No one should get paid more than anyone else. Okay, that's based upon the presumption that that's the universal rule. Okay, the householder chose to pay them the same amount because that was the arrangement he had with them individually. The amount was entirely coincidental, not because of some universal rule that states no one should get paid more than anyone else, no matter how little or how much they worked. That's if you want to make that rule, you can make that rule. That's not the rule here. So I think the part of the problem that people might come to with this passage is to suggest that there's some inconsistency or some kind of not being fair or some kind of contradiction. No, it was with them individually. Okay, now if it had been a universal rule, equal pay for equal work, it's a fine rule also. It's just that it doesn't operate here, and so it is. Also in society. Okay, for A, those who worked longer should have been paid more. Well, in the same way, there's no universal rule that states that there has to be equal pay for equal work. Generally, it's very practical, but the situation is not general. Again, it was tailored individually, not generally. And so God works with each one of us according to the way he will. That's his sovereign right. Okay, question 691. How is God's grace good? And I have based that on Matthew 20, verse 15. He says, "Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good?" And so the answer we got was
C.
B. Okay, entering heaven is not based on the degree of our works. That's how God's grace is good, that it's not based on our works, getting into heaven. So when you look at A, entering heaven is made easier by our labors? No. Okay, A, of course, is a reflection of how people of how people think that heaven is works-based. If it is works-based, then grace is irrelevant. Grace is irrelevant. Okay, for C, entering heaven is free to all, whether or not they believe, if they have labored hard for the Lord. Well, C is the opposite of A. Okay, A says it's entirely works-based. C says it's not works-based at all. It's not anything-based. Everybody goes to heaven. Okay, if salvation is not works-based, that does not mean that salvation is automatic. The idea that salvation is universal ignores the fact that there's a judgment for sin. Man's evil works do get judged as part of their condemnation. So works might not get us saved, but works will be part of the judgment. Does anybody remember offhand what the ism is, what the principle is that says that everybody goes to heaven? Begins with, go ahead, Brother Joe. Universalism, he says. It's too quick an answer to get a microphone out for that. Yeah, it's called universalism. This is a doctrine that's out there that suggests that everybody's going to go to heaven. Okay, for B, B is the correct formulation that simply states that salvation is not a function of works. And so the others are a variation on a theme here, but this is the correct formulation. It's not got to do with anything easier or harder at all. It's not a question of easier or harder. So when I say this is the correct formulation, this is how you have to frame it. This reminds me of a thing that our nephew Billy was showing us from his daughter's school, and they had a whole list of things for a discussion. And I just found it all curious. It all had to do with racism and poverty. And I thought it would be interesting. That's how they framed the question. Why didn't they, I asked, frame the question as, is there a problem of covetousness in America? Okay? And that is a more realistic question to ask rather than racism or poverty. Okay? Whether there's poverty, there's all kinds of things why there's poverty. There's all, and not all of it's, I would say almost none of it is due to unfair practices. It's due to all kinds of other things, but covetousness is a better way to look at it. So how you frame a problem becomes the issue. And here, you remove the question about works at all, neither good nor bad. It's all just of grace. Heaven is not based on works at all. Okay, so the workers' eye was evil because they were merely setting up a standard that would give them some kind of advantage. They were trying to frame it so that, well, maybe I should get better. I should get better works. I should get better reward. No, they all get the same reward, heaven. And the reason why is because God's sovereign rule was, I will work with you individually. Okay. 692 is based on Matthew 20, verses 8 and 16. Okay, the question is, how does one become part of the chosen? Okay, Matthew 20, verses 8 to 16 says, So when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith unto his steward, Call the laborers, and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. So the last shall be first, and the first last, for many be called, but few chosen. So, how does one become part of the chosen? Okay, C, by entering into an agreement to accept the calling to labor. Okay, so first let's look at A. Okay, by God forcing them to become a laborer without agreeing to it. No, nobody was forced into the labor agreement. Nobody was required to accept the call at all. He called out, who wants to work? And they responded and came to work. Okay, so B, everyone is part of the chosen, whether they accept the calling to labor. This is another form of universalism, and it is the opposite of A. Okay, When you look at C, they each had that relationship by answering the call. Now, it's interesting here, because we're taking these sections separately, it's interesting to make note that this parable is given on the heels of the rich young ruler who had just left Christ. What is unstated in this parable is how the young ruler had the opportunity to enter into a relationship, but did not do so. So while many are called, only those who answer the call are chosen. And I think that people like to take that half of the verse and go to town with it in a Calvinist kind of way, but you need to look at it also in the context of the rich young ruler. He had a total understanding of what it took, and he rejected it. He rejected it. Christ does not bring in any aspect of, well, I didn't want him anyhow. He didn't say, well, I never chose him. No, he treats it as a genuine opportunity that the person had to exercise his free will. He engaged him, he talked to him, he asked him questions, proposed an answer to him, and then the young man walked away because his possessions were too great. It's at that point that Christ brings in this parable and announces many are called and few are chosen.